he noticed that his life is short, as all of our lives are very short. So he talks about it in one of his books about, what led him to write his tafsir. And he wanted to dedicate his life to something that was the greatest of all fields. So he pondered and he came up to the conclusion that there's nothing like tafsir. Because not only is it the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in order to do tafsir properly, you have to master all other fields as well. Because in tafsir, you need to know hadith. In tafsir, you need to know beliefs, the different schools of thought, schools of those who followed the Sahaba, those who innovated, etc., etc. And so he devoted his life to that. And that's why we only have one book from him. There's actually two books from him, but the other one's lesser known. And we just have his tafsir. Now we're not going to do a tafsir of Ibn Atiyah. What we're going to focus on is a very famous tafsir, and I'm sure everyone has heard of this tafsir. And this is the tafsir of Imam Ibn Kathir. Tafsir Ibn Kathir. It's a very famous tafsir. And many people love tafsir Ibn Kathir because he took what Imam al-Tabari is one of the first to write a full tafsir. He passed away in the 300s Hijri, so over 1,000 years ago. And he was an Imam Mujtahid. He had his own madhab in fiqh. Like you have the Hanafi madhab, Maliki, Shafi'i. So Imam Tabari has his own madhab. Unfortunately, it didn't survive. But people in the past used to follow him, like how someone might follow Imam Malik or something like that. So he has a whole tafsir, and he was a great muhaddith. But this tafsir is huge. And it's considered one of the best tafsirs, and we will study, inshallah, why it was considered, or still is considered, one of the best tafsirs in today's time. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, the famous scholar from the 8th century Hijri, he stated that tafsir of Tabari is the greatest tafsir. And many people still hold that opinion, that Tabari is the greatest. So what he does in his tafsir is he has an ayah, and then he'll bring all of the hadith and all of the narrations regarding that ayah. And then he'll sift through them, he'll discuss them, things like that. Ibn Kathir takes a lot from Imam Tabari, and he has other sources as well. It's very concise. I say concise, but as you can see from the spine, this is one volume of many. Sometimes the spine makes like a little art pattern. So it's about 4 volumes that I have, this thick. So it's concise relatively. It's still a very large tafsir. So his tafsir is unique in that in the very beginning he has a chapter on how to do tafsir. It's called Usul Tafsir, or the principles of tafsir. I wanted to start off with that, inshallah. Do 10 minutes, I think I spoke for 5 minutes already. So 9:35, we'll pause. And we'll do this and we'll finish it. It's not too long. And then we'll decide whether to do Surah Fatiha all the way in the last juz, Surah An-Naba. So we'll go according to that. So after his introduction, I'm not going to read his introduction. He's praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sending salutations upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then he has a chapter about Usul Tafsir, or the foundations of tafsir. How does one go about doing tafsir? You're dealing with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you as a human being, what are the methods and what is the right way that the Salaf, or the first few generations, when we say the Salaf, you might have heard of this term before. Salaf means predecessors. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also spoke of them. It's a term that we use, and it means the first 3 generations. So the Salaf are the Sahaba, those who saw the Sahaba, and those who saw them. Or we should say those who saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, those who saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and those who saw those who saw those who saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sahaba, Tabi'een, Atba'u Tabi'een. That's what you call the Salaf. There's many ahadith where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that these people, you should follow them because they will be guided. As for those who come after, it's not really guaranteed. So the Salaf had a certain manhaj, or methodology. So Imam Ibn Kathir, he was very keen on this, and he wanted to follow this methodology of the Salaf. And he wrote these very concise pages, not too long, maybe like 5-6 pages, about how the Salaf used to do tafsir. And Imam Ibn Kathir is in the 700s, he passed away 774 Hijri. So that's much later. So now I'm just going to read through it, and I'll explain as we go, inshallah. It may take a few days due to my explanation. So he says, فَإِنْ قَالَ قَائِلٌ فَمَا أَحْسَنُ طُرُقِ التَّفْسِيرِ. If someone asks the question, what is the best method in which we can do tafsir of Quran? فالجواب, the answer is, and then now he writes this whole chapter. What's the best method of tafsir? أن أصح الطرق في ذلك أن يفسر القرآن بالقرآن. So now the first thing we have to understand is there's many ways people have done tafsir. Imam Suyuti is a really famous scholar, a great scholar of Islam. He passed away. It's very easy to remember when he died, 9/11. Great, 9/11. So that's why I never forget when Suyuti passed away. He wrote almost on every field in Islam. He's a polymath. He has a tafsir, the famous Jalalain. You might have heard that tafsir. He also co-wrote that book. He has another tafsir called Ad-Durr al-Mansur. It's only hadith. The whole tafsir is just hadith. So he has an ayah and he'll just bring every hadith related to that. That's all he does. So that's a method. Tafsir al-Kabir, which I mentioned earlier, the big tafsir, actual name is Mafatih al-Ghaib, Keys of the Unseen. That's the name of the tafsir. That tafsir is different in that he does have hadith and stuff, but his main thing is he's using his rationale. So he looks at an ayah and he inspects, and he was a master of logic and philosophy, so he's bringing out all these different aspects from his mind, and he says, brings different points. So you get that aspect from that tafsir. So Imam Ibn Kathir is saying there's so many ways of tafsir. What's the best? He says, the first line, the best method of tafsir is using the Quran to do tafsir of Quran. That's the best method. Because you might find something in one place, it's very vague. In another place of the Quran, Allah Himself will explain. So that's the best method you can go across. You can adopt this method, and this was the way of the Salaf and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as well. He says, فَمَا أُجْمِلَ فِي مَكَانٍ فَإِنَّهُ قَدْ فُسِرَ فِي مَوْضِعٍ آخَرٍ. You will find something ambiguous in one spot, and you will find it explained later on. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fatiha, اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ, guide us to the straight path. صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, the path of those who you have blessed. Now, who are those who Allah has blessed? Now you could say, okay, maybe it's Sahaba, or the Awliya, or the Anbiya. You can start, making these guesses. But Allah Himself in Surah An-Nisa, He says, مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. Surah An-Nisa, later on, He says those who Allah has blessed. He uses the same word, أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. And then He mentions Anbiya, Siddiqeen, Shuhada, Salihin. These four categories. So what He's saying here is, why go somewhere else when you can find the tafsir in the Quran itself? That's the best method. Allah Himself will explain later on. وَمَا اخْتُصِرَ فِي مَكَانٍ فَإِنَّهُ قَدْ بُسِطَ فِي مَوْضِعٍ آخَرٍ. If something is concise in one place, you'll find it explained more later on. How many times the story of Musa alayhi salam comes in the Quran? Almost every surah, Musa alayhi salam's story. Sometimes Allah only puts half of the story in one surah. Surah Al-Qasas, the whole surah is like the story of Musa alayhi salam. Surah Taha, the whole story is Musa alayhi salam. So in another place you'll find it expanded. That's what he's saying. The best method is tafsir of Quran through Quran. فَإِنْ أَعْيَاكَ ذَلِكَ فَعَلَيْكَ بِالسُّنَّةِ. If you find an ayah, your first job as a mufassir, he's talking about from the angle that he's a mufassir. Look throughout the whole Quran and try to find something that explains the ayah. You might not always get that. Quran is very concise. And, to us the Quran seems very long. It's Taraweeh. It's long, it takes a whole month. To read a Khatam al-Quran sometimes it takes a year, it's long. Relatively speaking, in comparison to the Hadith, Quran is very small, very short. Even if you compare it to the Old Testament, New Testament, it's super short. Quran is concise. I've spoken about this before. If you took the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, his Hadith collection, you compare Quran's size to it, Quran is like not even 1/10, 1/30th of that. And that's not even all of Hadith. So Quran is relatively small. So he says you might not find your answer for this ayah in another ayah of Quran. Then you must resort to Sunnah. You must resort to the Hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to find your answer. What does this word mean in the Quran? We look secondly in the Sunnah. فَإِنَّهَا شَارِحَةٌ لِلْقُرْآنِ. The Sunnah is an explanation of Quran. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to explain Quran, to first deliver the Quran. That's his job, main job of the messenger is to receive the wahi and to give it to humanity. Second job is to explain its contents. So the Quran explains itself most of the time. Sometimes even the Sahaba are like, what does this mean? I don't fully understand this ayah. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will say, okay, the ayah actually means this. The Sahaba will record that hadith and then transmit it, and now you and I have it. So now you have to look in the Sunnah if you don't find it in the Quran. بل قد قال الإمام أبو عبد الله محمد بن إدريس الشافعي رحمه الله كل ما حكم به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فهو مما فهمه من القرآن. Imam al-Shafi'i, he says anything that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has decided, any ruling, any action that he has done, it is based off of his understanding of Quran. So everything we find in the Sunnah, in the Seerah, in the thousands and hundreds of thousands of hadith, they are tafsir of Quran. In some way or another, Imam al-Shafi'i is saying this. Anytime Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has done something, said something, commanded something, it's because of his understanding of Quran. So now, why apply your understanding of Quran when you have the understanding of the one who it was revealed to? Who knows it better than him? قال الله تعالى إنا أنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق لتحكم بين الناس بما أراك الله ولا تكن للخائنين خصيما. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, indeed we have revealed to you the Quran in truth so that you may judge between people, through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught you, and do not benefit those who are deceptive. So here in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically saying that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you teach according to what Allah has taught you. So that is why we resort to the Sunnah. And he's going to feature a few more ayahs. Allah also says, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Allah has sent you the dhikr and the reminder, the Quran, so that you may explain to people that which was revealed to them, so that they may ponder. Again, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's job is explanation of Quran. In another verse, وَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا لِتُبَيِّنَ لَهُمُ الَّذِي اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. We have revealed to you the Quran so you may explain to them. And one more ayah, or rather a hadith. وَلِهَذَا قَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم أَلَا إِنِّي أُوتِيتُ الْقُرْآنَ وَمِثْلَهُ مَعَهُ. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, I have been given the Quran and something like it. What is something like the Quran? The Sunnah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was given the Sunnah by Allah. Thus, we must utilize the Sunnah to also explain the Quran. So that's the first lesson that we're going to talk about here. Essentially, Imam Ibn Kathir is basically saying the method of tafsir that scholars are to follow is look throughout the Quran to find commentary of the Quran itself. And you will find that. If you cannot, notice he says if you cannot, he doesn't say it's not there. Sometimes another mufassir will come and say, oh, I found this ayah and it explains, but you couldn't find it. If you can't find it, look in the Sunnah. And then he's going to explain what is the Sunnah, how do we get tafsir, and what are the other forms. He still has not gone, what if it's not in the Sunnah? What do you do then? So there's many methodologies that are to be employed. And then he even goes into, can you look at the Bible and the Torah for tafsir? Yeah, it's called Isra'iliyat. Are you allowed to do this or not? So he's going to go and talk about this action. Then he says, can you do tafsir with your intellect? As some have done in the past. So we're going to talk about all of these different things. Is it permissible or not? And what is the best methodology? So that's all for tonight, inshallah. We'll continue tomorrow. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم. We're going to start Arba'in in 3 minutes.
That 940 Arba'in. How are you? You go there? You got another one?
Huh?
940?
Yeah, Arba'in.
What is that?
Arba'in Tafsir. So we're doing the 40 principles from Azali.
Oh, okay.
It's Arba'in.
Huh?
From the Arba'in. Find it.
That's going to start at 940? See you, brother.
Yeah, like that. Say for instance,
It's working.
it doesn't really mention something specific. But you can
Just tell me that at 940 that Arba'in.
Now you can't use your even though I think it's like this sense of
When are you going to go?
did he build this boat out of the trees? I think it's metal.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't say anything at all, now you can
No, I was just trying to see.
There's different methodologies.
I can start missing it. You're going to
It is permissible, but there are certain conditions. It can't like it's tampered with. You have to be very cautious. Even though the ones we have today is still considered the best. If someone wanted, they could
like
build the Bible.
I just
But there's
those I can't find. I can't find when I go to Somali market. There's nowhere else to get that. I mean, there's other stores like
the Gospel of Mark. But a lot of people saying that it's not accurate.
You can't, it's okay. So this year. Yeah, I just made it to
What like you'll get income if you do that. It shouldn't be something bad. It's just like okay, maybe like pizza or something.
It's on YouTube. It's just they post privately. So if you go to the videos, then they can.
Yeah, outside. The advertisement shouldn't be something.
I don't know.
They can, yeah, maybe they can hold like alcohol, drink wine, but now you're showing you're going to be
The first 2 weeks when I picked
Let's set up. I'll start right now. I'll print later. Okay, so law's at 9:15.
Yeah.
When did it change? Like yesterday?
Yesterday.
That's what it's yeah, but it's more. Yes, it's starting to creep. Yeah, it's like here. It's the tent. الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So previously we're still going on in the chapter of dhikr and how a person when they are engrossed in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it changes them, gives them a nur from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their minds and their hearts are transported elsewhere and they are given benefit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and hidayah. Now there was one paragraph left in the previous passage, so I'm just going to read that, and then he has a question which he answers after this. We're almost done with the chapter. The majority of what dhikr is, etc., we've already discussed that. So he talks about the 4 levels of dhikr, what happens when a person goes into a state called fana, and he talked about various different terminologies such as going to Allah, traversing in Allah, returning from Allah. These are terms that were coined and they have certain meanings. Now he says here, وَكَذَلِكَ الْقَوْلُ فِي الْمَعْرِفَةِ فَمَنْ طَلَبَ الْمَعْرِفَةَ لِلْمَعْرِفَةِ فَقَدْ قَالَ بِالثَّانِي. He says, if you are seeking ma'rifah is like understanding Allah. Now, he's mentioning this point that when you do dhikr, your goal is not the dhikr. Your goal is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the core of the dhikr. That's what he mentioned earlier on. So like when you're doing dhikr, it's not so you can say those words. Those words are a means to your goal. And also previously he talked about malaika, that when you do dhikr, malaika are attentive and they're recording and they're aware of you. So your goal shouldn't be that the malaika are aware. And the only time you can make the malaika unaware of your situation is if you are unaware of your situation. So if you're unaware of what's happening, the malaika won't record. And that's why if you dream of something halal or haram, there's no issue. You're not going to be sinful for dreaming something. You're unaware. So malaika are not going to be recording good or bad. He says similarly in dhikr, when you're doing dhikr of Allah, malaika are recording. MashaAllah, he's doing good, let's record it. And Imam Ghazali had this very deep, far-sighted understanding of Tawheed, that Tawheed means understanding Allah to be one, or singling Allah out for worship, in other words. Tawheed, oneness of Allah. He says true Tawheed can only be attained by a person when they're in fana. Why? Because once a person reaches fana, they're unaware of their state. They're remembering Allah, but they're stuck in that state and they're unaware that they're remembering Allah. So when they're in that state, now the malaika, because you're unaware of your situation, they're also unaware. Because malaika are aware when you're aware. So now he's unaware of his situation, malaika are unaware of his situation. The only one aware of him is Allah. So he says this is true Tawheed because only Allah remains. He doesn't remain, malaika don't remain, only Allah remains. So now he continues on with this idea and he says, we can say the same thing about ma'rifah or knowing Allah. If you are learning about Allah for the sake of knowing Allah, then you're not really after Allah. It's a very deep thing, meaning, let's say a person is reading different books, you're trying to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but your goal is to understand Allah. Meaning, I'm after the academic side. I'm not really after getting to know Allah like that. I just want to know the academic side. So he says, you're not really trying to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, وَمَنْ وَجَدَهَا كَأَنَّهُ لَا يَجِدُهَا بَلْ يَجِدُ الْمَعْرُوفَ بِهَا. If a person finds that he is understanding Allah, but it's not like he's seeking Allah out. Rather, he has the essence of it. Then he says, فَهُوَ الَّذِي اسْتَمْكَنَ مِنْ حَقِيقَةِ الْوِصَالِ. This person has truly reached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَحَلَّ بُحْبُوحَةَ حَضِيرَةِ الْقُدْسِ. And he has reached the highest stages. So now what is he talking about here? He's referring to dhikr as well. If a person is through the dhikr trying to understand Allah, but his goal is like, I want to understand Allah, then that goal is blocking him from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond that. But if he in the process of trying to know Allah, becomes unaware of his situation anymore because he's so engrossed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now he has reached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's basically saying that you do try to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you go so far into it that you dissociate with it, and you're not after anything anymore. You have reached the goal, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all that remains. He says that person has truly reached the goal. So that's basically what he was saying in that paragraph. Now he's going to continue on. So that was connected to what we discussed before. I just missed out that paragraph last time, so I wanted to include that here. Now he asks a question. فَإِنْ قُلْتَ فَلِمَا اخْتَصَّتْ هَذِهِ الْمُكَاشَفَاتُ بِحَالِ الْفَنَاءِ. So he spoke about many things. When you're in fana, so many things are going to happen. He spoke of very strange things, that the conditions of the anbiya, or he says the arwah of the malaika, or a person will be able to sense prophets or angels or have visions, different scenarios, very odd things. And then he says ultimately he will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everywhere. Not like Allah is a physical being, but he feels, it's something that we can't explain. So the question that he brings up is, someone may ask, why is all of this for a person who reaches fana? Why not something else? Why do I have to go through this method of fana to get there? What's so special about this oblivion or annihilation or fana? So he's going to answer that. Why this state of dhikr is so special. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ هَذِهِ قِصَّةٌ يَطُولُ فِيهَا نَظَرُ النَّاظِرِ. He says, first of all, this is a very long thing. If I was to explain all the way, it would take a very long time. But he's going to summarize for us. ولكن إذا تأملت لم تقصر عن أن تدرك كون الحواس وعوارض النفس وشهواتها جاذبة إلى هذا العالم المحسوس. So he says, if you ponder over yourself, you will notice that your senses and your desires, they pull you towards this world. So you have your eyes, ears, sense of taste, touch, feeling, all of this, your senses, as well as your desires. All of that is connected to dunya. When you use your eyes more, you get more connected to dunya. When you use your ears more, you get more connected to dunya. When you follow your nafs and your desires, you get more connected to the dunya. عالم الزور والغرور. This dunya is what? Is a deception and a lie. That's what he said, the dunya. So the more you use your senses, the more you are entrapped in a lie. And I used the example before. There was a movie that was released a very long time ago. It's called The Matrix. So a lot of people use this example. It's a very famous movie where this person's living in a fake world and he wakes up into the real world and it's completely different than what it was. So Imam al-Ghazali is basically saying this dunya that you and I perceive and we see, it's like a fake world. So the more you use your senses that are limited to this fake world, the more engrossed in it you become. وَلِذَلِكَ يَنْكَشِفُ صَرِيحُ الْحَقِّ بِالْمَوْتِ. He says this is why once you die, reality becomes apparent to you. The second a person dies, they understand and they perceive reality more than any time when they were alive. True reality becomes apparent. You start seeing angels, you start seeing, what's going to happen. All of this becomes apparent. Now you can see them. So this is the real realm. Angels are real, but we cannot see it because we're living in a kind of a masked situation. Allah can remove that mask, and when we die, it's removed. And now you can see all of this. لبطلان سلطان الحواس والخيالات المولية بوجه القلب إلى عالم السفل. Why does this happen when you and I die? Because the senses no longer work, and the thoughts that remove the heart from reality and bring it down to this world, all of those thoughts are gone. So he's basically saying when a person dies, these senses stop working. The eyes stop working, ears, smell, they stop working when you die. The body doesn't work anymore. Also, the mind's thoughts that are just wandering all around, that hold you down to this dunya, they also stop. He says that is why the soul becomes aware of everything after you die, because these distractions go away. So he's calling your senses as well as your thoughts distractions, basically. And when you die, distractions are removed, thus you're able to see angels, you're able to see all of this stuff. When you're in the grave, angels will come, they'll talk to you, they'll ask you questions, interrogate. Some people will have adhab and punishment, and some people will have pleasure in the grave. This is reality. It's true, even though you and I can't see it. If you're to dig up exhume a body, you won't see any kind of punishment or reward happening. But he is experiencing that, and that is reality. So why do we experience all this when we die? Because senses and thoughts are removed. That is when you can perceive reality. فإن قصر عنك سلطان الحواس بالنوم طُلِعْتَ بشيء من الغيب على قدر استعدادك وقبولك وهمتك. So he says, another example. So that was one example. When you die, you get to see all these ghaibi things because no more thoughts and no more senses get in the way. These things are distractions. Another example, when you fall asleep, you no longer can see the dunya, you no longer can smell, hear, taste, all this stuff gets cut off to a great extent. You can still hear and things like that. There are some portions that you are aware of when you're sleeping, but mostly all of your senses are gone. He says, when you sleep, you are able to grasp some of the ghaib in accordance to your level. Some people who are very pious, they have cleansed their ruh, they're able to see very beautiful dreams. They may see Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They may see some of the Sahaba. They may see other Anbiya. They may see very amazing things in their dream. They may even see themselves in Jannah. Some people have reported they may even see Jahannam because they've purified themselves. So he's saying, why does this happen in your dreams? Because your senses are shut off. When the senses and the thoughts are shut off, you're able to perceive these things. ولكن بمثال يحتاج إلى التعبير. He says, however, this is not 100%. You're not 100% capable of perceiving. It would require a ta'bir and interpretation. So you'll see a funny dream and you're like, what is this? You go to some scholar who does dream interpretations and then they'll tell you, okay, this is what it means. It's funny, one person saw a dream. I think he went to Ibn Sirin. He was very famous for his dream interpretations. He was a tabi'i. And he saw himself urinating on multiple Qur'ans. He's urinating on Qur'an. So he's like, astaghfirullah. He went to this tabi'i. He's like, what did I see? He said, you will, from your loins will be born 4 sons who will be hufaz. Hafid of Qur'an. That's what that means. So, your mind wouldn't understand, how did you reach this? And then he did have children. I think 4 children, and they were hafid of Qur'an. That's what it meant. And another person could come with the same dream and he would say something else to him. That, you're in trouble. You need to do tawbah. Probably had the same dream. That's because he was aware of this alam, this state, Ibn Sirin, etc. Dream interpreters, real good ones are those who have a connection with this other realm. Anyway, he's saying it requires some interpretation in dreams. That's why you should always, if you do have a dream, you should go to someone who you rely on and someone who wishes well for you. Some of my teachers also told me, or told us in class, that dreams have multiple interpretations. And if someone gives you a certain interpretation, then it's been interpreted and it will unfold in a similar manner. So always don't tell your dreams to anybody. And that teacher of ours, he said when he was young, when he was a student, he had a dream that he would take the place of one of the greatest shuyukh in that time. As a young man, he had this dream. He told his classmate, and his classmate was like, oh, that's nothing, you're not going to amount to anything. You will never be able to catch up with this scholar. And he said throughout his life, he saw moments where he was supposed to progress and perhaps reach that stage and he never could. So Allahu A'lam. But it is true, we should not tell our dreams to just anybody. You should keep it secure. And if you really want an interpretation, tell some people that you trust, and they can help you with that. But if someone is going to give you a bad ta'bir or a bad interpretation, it's better not to tell them. Sometimes even your friends, you think they're your friends, they actually are jealous. It's mumkin if you have these types of dreams. So if you see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, be very cautious with that. Share it with some people who you are close to, and get that ta'bir of what it may mean. And you don't even have to share. If you saw Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's a good dream, Allahu A'lam what it really means. If you really want that interpretation, you can ask. But it's definitely going to be good. Anyway, he's saying this is why you see all of these in your dreams. It's actually, now there's different levels of dreams. There's a lot to be said about dreams. There's a hadith about this. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says there's 3 types of dreams. There is Basharu min Allah, glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those who do good, they're purifying their soul, they're staying away from haram, they're doing all of the good. If they see a good dream, something nice, this is actually Allah is giving them a good dream. It's a congratulations. You can see some isharat and signs. And that's why some of the scholars of purification, they will state that one of the signs to display that a person is progressing in their spirituality is that they're getting good dreams. It may appear this way or that way. So that's one. Another is takhweef min ash-shaytan. Sometimes a shaytan or a jinn is affecting a person, and that's why you get nightmares. That's possible. That's a possible reason why we get nightmares. So you should, in the hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, wake up, you spit a little bit on your side, and you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, recite Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, inshallah Allah will protect you. Surah Ayatul Kursi, all of these things are a must if we want to protect ourselves in our dreams. Because shayateen, they have access. And then the third is Hadithul Nafs. Hadithul Nafs is the self replaying things. And most of the time I feel like what we see is Hadithul Nafs. It's what you see in the day, you'll see a different version of that at night. It's just processing. So if you see something in the day, like something happening, you see it again at night, it's not like a miracle. It's Hadithul Nafs. An example of Basharu min Allah is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to get. 6 months before he became a Nabi, alayhi salam, he would see dreams, and the next day the same exact thing, without any kind of interpretation, would happen. So he was telling the future. He was able to tell the future from his dreams. So if you're getting those kind of things, where like exactly what you saw last night is happening, these are very good signs for you. Anyway, he's just given an example. And I will let me try to do a little bit more, inshallah, so we can finish on a good note and not leave it on a cliffhanger. وما عندي أنك لم تصادف من نفسك رؤيا صادقة اطلعت بها على أمر مستقبل لكن بالمثال. He says, I don't think that you would get visions of what is to happen in the future except through some of your dreams. He says, sometimes he's being honest. You know, we've done examples like this before. He's like, I don't think you're at that level yet. You know, he's talking about that right now. You probably won't see things when you're awake, like visions, but it's possible, he's saying. But sometimes you would witness this at night in your dreams. I'm sure many of you had very good dreams before. I know some of you have. So this is a good sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is just an example that he's giving. He says, why are dreams like this? When you die, you see reality. 100% you're seeing it. Without, interpretation. You don't need to interpret. There's a big old angel in front of you, or Malakul Maut standing in front of you, like, maybe this means that. No, there's no interpretation. However, in dreams, you have to interpret. Why is this? He's saying when you're in dreams, your thoughts don't stop. Your hawas and your senses stop. So you get half-half. You're like 50-50. So if you're pious and you have good thoughts, then you'll be able to see reality, kind of. It becomes apparent in your dreams. And if you're not so much, you still might get a dream that is kind of like reality, but you have to interpret it. So that's the reasoning behind it. Whatever he is mentioning, these are examples to tell you when your thoughts as well as your senses are stopped, you become aware of reality. فَذَلِكَ يَضْعُفُ الْإِطِّلَاعِ. Your thoughts running while you're sleeping, it weakens your capability of perception. وَلَا يَخْلُ عَنْ شَوْبِ الْمِثَالِ. And this is going to affect you in some way. It's going to cast some type of veil over you. Now, he's getting back to the answer. Remember, this whole thing was a question. The question is, why is fana so important? We've been talking about fana this whole chapter. Why is it so important? Why all these unveilings and these spiritual blessings from Allah only happen in fana? Why? He gave you 2 examples why. And the answer is, when your thoughts and your senses cease, then Allah allows you to perceive reality. And that's exactly what happens in fana. You're awake, you're aware, you're not dreaming, you're not sleeping. The senses are completely shut off, and the thoughts are completely shut off. And you're only focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is when all of these what's called ma'arif,
or understandings of reality descend upon a person. So, he's a philosopher, Imam al-Ghazali. He's thought very deeply about this, and he's experienced it. So he's putting it in words that you and I, or simpletons, that we can understand. So now I'm just going to read one more paragraph, inshallah, and we will pause. وَأَمَّا الْفَنَاء. As for fana, now he gets to the true answer. فَعِبَارَةٌ عَنْ حَالَةٍ تَرْكُضُ فِيهَا الْحَوَاسُ وَلَا تَشْتَغِلُ. Fana is a scenario, a situation, where all of the senses are ceased and the mind is not aware of anything. It's complete stillness. وَيَسْكُنُ فِيهَا الْخَيَالُ فَلَا يُشَوِّشُ. The thoughts are completely sakin, meaning that it's completely still, it's not affected. فإن بقيت في الخيال بقية مغلوبة لم تؤثر إلا في محاكاة ما يتجلى من عالم القدس. If there's something remaining in your understanding in the state of fana, this will not be harmful because it will display to you reality. So he's saying a person's in fana, maybe a portion of them is still aware. If they are aware, then they will start to be able to understand all of these hidden things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to them. Now, to be clear, Allah in the Quran, He says that the ghaib is only known by Allah. The ghaib is only known by Allah. Where a person will die, when a person will be born, all of these different things are the ghaib. So no one really knows these things. If a person gets understanding of these in his state of fana, it's only a clue, and that's why we talked about in the very beginning, Imam al-Ghazali, he kind of knew when he was going to die. He wrapped himself in his own shroud and he died. So he kind of had a clue, but we won't say that he knows exactly when he's going to die. Only Allah knows those things. So when we talk about, he's talking about these ma'arif, what he's really talking about is understanding of Allah that you can't put in words. Allah is beyond words. He's the creator of words. So to understand Him, you need some spiritual, different level. So he's saying this is what happened when you're in the state of fana. You have a small amount of awareness, or whatever he's saying here. I'm not sure if I'm mentioning it correctly, but it absorbs the understanding from a different realm. حتى يتمثل الأنبياء والملائكة والأرواح المقدسة في قوالب الخيال. He gets images of anbiya, he gets images of malaika, ruh, pious souls in his thoughts. So it's not like a Nabi comes before you. He's in a state of fana, so Allah will send him these images in his mind. So it's like a dream, but it's more vivid and more clear. That's what he's talking about here. He's not saying that you'll see Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam before you. We were nothing for Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to come right in front of us. But these thoughts may come, Allah will send it to this person's mind when he's in this state of fana. So this is, he's going to continue with this, but I think we can pause here, inshallah, because it's getting a little bit late. But I'll do a recap of this, and he has maybe 2 more paragraphs for this question to be answered. And then he gives us some more terminologies, and after that is interesting, he gives you a dhikr that you can do. Like, he has another question. What's the best dhikr then? What should I be doing? And so he gives you a formula, a phrase that you and I can use, and he gives you a reason why you should state that. So we'll wait till then. And after that, this chapter is going to finish, inshallah. And this was quite a lengthy chapter. As you can tell, it's very important, because this is ma'arif, our understanding Allah, and the gifts that you get from going into the state of dhikr. It's beyond comprehension. It's hard to put in words. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to be punctual and habitual of dhikr and His remembrance, and give us tawfiq to reach these deeper states of remembrance such that we can also understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and realize ultimately why we were created, and have that iman and yaqeen. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu tabaraka wa ta'ala ala khayri khalqi Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair.